Hello, and welcome to the Migraine Oasis podcast, where we'll help you achieve more pain-free days by tackling the root causes that keep you stuck in the pain cycle. Our goal is to help you heal from the inside out for sustainable results. We'll cover everything you need for a holistic and mind-body approach to healing. From understanding how pain works to uncovering areas of tension within the mind, body, and spirit that can trigger your pain, and sharing practical tips to break free and find relief. I'm your host, Karen Ash, a former chronic migraine sufferer, certified coach, patient advocate, and migraine mentor here to support your healing journey. If you're ready to change your relationship with migraine and get back to living, let's dive in. Hi, and welcome. So today I am talking to Chelsea Emery from Oregon in the West Coast of the United States. And Chelsea is a former teacher with more than 30 years of teaching experience, and she's now been on her own healing journey out of migraine and other neuroplastic symptoms. And in our conversation, you'll hear about how she discovered mind-body healing approach, what her experience was like, what worked for her, the tools that worked, and how she is now creating a new life and career, helping others out of symptoms. So let's dive in and hear Chelsea's story. And my hope is that something in here brings a fresh insight and new way of approaching your healing journey out of chronic pain and symptoms. Chelsea, I'm so excited that you're here with us today and hear your story and your insights and all those other good things. I think it's so important. Every single recovery story, whether you call it recovery, healing, whenever somebody is feeling better after doing some of this work, to recognize and to hear from people that can offer hope to somebody else that is in a position thinking this is a lifelong thing I have to struggle with, that there's no way out, etc. Let's start by talking about your story. I want to hear everything from migraine, obviously, is a focal point. At the same time, I want to hear about any other type of symptoms because it's so important to connect the dots for people to understand that, oh, actually your anxiety or your stomach issues or that thing that happened 10 years ago, might all actually be connected and have the same root cause. Why don't we just start with where it all started and how things progressed for you?
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. So I'll just say up front that I had headaches and migraines for 45 years. And at this stage now, just to say right here at the beginning, I've only had one in the last 2 years, which is very
It's
shocking.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. That is
yeah.
great.
So for me, the headache started when I was 8 years old and then progressed to when I became a teenager. They moved into longer episodes, more migraine classification. And in my growing up years, I never saw a medical doctor for headaches and migraines because my primary family that I lived with, I had two divorced parents, were very, had an alternative health mindset. So the community around me, needless to say, there were a lot of chiropractors, naturopaths, acupuncturists. And in my teenage years, my mom took me to see every one of these at one stage or another. And it turned out that chiropractors were the vehicle that could give me some relief. So I saw chiropractors many years into adulthood because sometimes, particularly a neck adjustment, could either head off a big episode or lessen it, just releasing that tension. I understood even then, as I was getting adjustments, it wasn't a cure, but it did help.
Mhm.
So, and because I couldn't find any other cure, that's what I kept returning to. So
Mhm.
I lived with these just, you know, all the time. When I reached the age of 40, I went into my longest episode ever, which lasted about 18 months. I would go to sleep with it, wake up with it,
Oh
then maybe,
gosh, every day having them.
yes, yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
Wow.
And I would, maybe get one day off and then they would just return. Nothing was working, no adjustment, no resting, nothing.
Mm.
And I I can remember just crying my eyes out, which of course doesn't help when you have a migraine.
Oh, I bet
You know,
though. It's so scary, right?
well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. You might have thought that with an episode of that length, I would have gone in for an MRI. I would have gotten some prescribed medication. I maybe would have like sought out Botox injections, but that's not what I did. And I think it's important to note here the reason I didn't is twofold. One is that I was conditioned um, alternatively,
Mhm.
and I had had them from when I was so young that I had normalized them. Well, and I
Mm.
guess, and then the last thing is that I wasn't afraid of them because I was so used to them. I never thought I had a tumor. I never thought anything was wrong. I think I had like surrendered that this was just my lot in life. Everybody had something. This is what I had.
Mm.
And maybe I was even had shame. I had shame about having them, that it meant something about me. And so there may be some element of that as well. And
Mhm.
I often spent a lot of time around diet, thinking it was diet. I thought everything was diet related, especially in alternative health. There's a lot of focus on that. And then, of course, in the migraine world, you're thinking it's chocolate, it's coffee, it's aged
Mm.
foods, it's raw onions, it's all those
All
things,
the
right?
triggers, yep. Mhm.
Right. And
Yep.
so I thought it was those things as well. I didn't know, but I kept experimenting. And then what's ironic here is that I did stumble across one diet related component that ended up helping me. And this is that in my family, we're big sugar lovers, bakers.
Mm.
So you bake to celebrate and you stress bake when things are bad. And along that line is also like sugary breakfast, like pancakes, coffee cakes, waffles, these kinds of things, right?
The American way.
Right? Yeah. Um, so in my experimentation, I, well, I'll just say, so because of that sugar
Mm.
love, a lot of my family members, as well as myself, had blood sugar issues.
Mhm.
So we don't fast, we don't skip a meal because that irritability, that moodiness, headaches would
Mhm.
occur if you didn't.
Mhm.
So, as I didn't want to be so irritable, so moody, and especially being a parent, and so I would be very strict with my meals. And one of the things I discovered in this time, which changed everything as far as that goes, is I started having no sugar at breakfast, no sugary breakfast ever. They would have to
Mhm.
be protein and a complex carbohydrate. As long as my first meal of the day was that, I didn't have to worry about anything else the rest of the day. And my headaches and migraines cut in half with that alone.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because for me, there was a blood sugar component. I know that's not the same for everyone, but I did want to share that with your listeners who might have that component because it was part of what was going on for me. There is somebody now who I would recommend to your listeners. I didn't have her back then when I came across this for myself. She's on Instagram and she has a book out. She's called The Glucose Goddess, and she gives you 10 tips about how to keep things regulated in you as far as that goes, your blood sugar ups and downs. It was so validating when I came across her because savory breakfast is absolutely one of her number ones.
Mhm.
Anyhow, so I just throw that out if there's
Yeah,
anyone who
I'll
might
link
have
it
that.
in the show notes. I wanted to stop you there for a second. One of the things that struck me at the beginning when you were saying you weren't really afraid of the migraines, when I started thinking about that, thinking, oh, that's interesting because usually we're talking about in this neuroplastic pain and symptom and mind body healing type stuff, that fear is the catalyst and the problem of all. Like when the brain feels
Right.
danger, then this is the problem. So I was kind of like, okay, what's the other components that she had? But when you started talking about the diet, then I thought, okay, when we're so rigid or hyper vigilant about certain foods and we were talking about the triggers. This is so, so, so common in all of us with migraine. We think it's everything to do with all these different triggers. And when you
Yeah.
start to get hypervigilant around that, that's the fear-based thinking or the intensity that you're putting into things or the frustration when things aren't going well or you're having such a strict diet that it's sending the brain all these messages of like, we've got a problem here. And this can be part of the issue that's creating the tension. But I find it really interesting too. We talk about regular medicine as biomedical model. That's what the technical term is. And then this is the biopsychosocial model. So it expands it from not just your biology, but into the psychology and how we're feeling and how our thoughts interact with our physical bodies, as well as the social aspect and the environments we're in, et cetera, et cetera. But I think one of the pieces that we miss often is this biology side as far as looking at setting our bodies up to be able to heal in the best optimal way. So we're talking about in this category our sleep and our hydration and the whole foods that we're eating or the crappy processed foods that all of us are usually consuming or the sugar like you're saying. I think that's a really good point that I just wanted to stop and capture that I don't think we talk about enough, to be honest. We're so focused on this brain retraining and the nervous system regulation and all these other aspects, which are important. But at the same time, if you don't get the biology right, if you don't get the internal state right, I say right, not right, but optimal to support your healing, essentially, then there's all kinds of other components that you're kind of stacking against you. I'm jumping back in as I'm editing this episode because as we wrapped up the interview, Chelsea and I stayed on the phone for, oh my gosh, a good hour afterwards, talking about all kinds of things. And one of the things that came up was around this dietary change that she had made. And sometimes restrictive diets and food avoidance can also fuel symptoms. She was saying maybe we should take that part of the episode out because it might confuse people because we both knew that actually the issue is not the food source, but our belief around it that is actually the problem that can fuel this reactivity. And if you really believe something is harmful to you, or you believe something is really helpful to you in your altering of the intake of something, the placebo and the nocebo effect kick in. That's a topic for another episode. But I told her, no, I really want to keep this in the episode because it reduced her symptoms by 50% at that time. That's so significant. And I want to honor that part of her story. But as you'll hear her say in a moment, as the migraine came down, other symptoms arose. So this is telling us that, okay, the root cause was still not actually addressed. So whether this changed her diet and the sugar helped her feel safe in that moment, and this is why it helped, or whether it was something in the mechanism of the sugar spikes, whether it's other stressors coming in and other symptoms arising, it's hard to say what exactly is the core of this. But as she started working on the true root causes, that's when she started to heal from all of the symptoms. So we did agree that I would jump in the middle of this and put a little bit more context to it. And just to mention that, yes, it did help her in that way. It still continues to help her in feeling like the savory breakfast and a more balanced sugar state within her day is helpful to her. And that is part of her journey. Anybody who feels that they can benefit from that, I want to make sure that part is in the story. As I mentioned before, I just think overall health and wellness of being hydrated, eating good, proper food and nutrition, getting proper sleep, all these things just sets us up for more success and the body to be able to be in a position of healing. To greatly reduce sugary foods and processed foods, this is all just a part of our overall well-being and good choices for our health. It's just something important to point out because the last thing that Chelsea or I wanted anybody to do is now go off and do a really restrictive diet or get really caught up in trying to monitor everything that they're eating and monitor the sugar spikes and all this kind of stuff, because that can be actually counterintuitive to your healing. So I hope that makes sense, and let's get back to the episode. So no, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And to some, this might be a factor, some not. But that's yeah, good to point out.
Yeah, right. Because we're all so unique.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop the
Oh,
story.
no. So, unfortunately, while my migraines lessened, and this may be interesting, other symptoms began to grow.
Hmm.
And these developed until by the time I was 52, and I'm 56, so 4 years ago, I went through a physical shutdown. The symptoms layered upon each other in very fast succession. And some of those are sciatica, interstitial cystitis, pelvic pain, IBS, insomnia. I mean, I could keep listing. Those are the big
Mm,
ones, though. It was just, and when that occurred, I became terrified. I
yeah.
felt that I thought, honestly, the only answer could be that I was had some disease. I was dying. That I was gonna. They were gonna uncover something when I went in to see all the medical doctors now.
Right, right.
I mean, I saw all the medical doctors, the specialists, did all the tests, and I also saw all the alternative doctors as well.
Okay.
Because, and Dr. Google, because as we know, when you're in that terrified state, you see everyone, you research everything, you're reading everything you can. And sadly, mostly I just overwhelmed many of the doctors by the sheer magnitude of symptoms. And the main message I got was that these were conditions I was going to have to live with, really. That was kind of the main
Mm,
message I got. And in general, in life, I operate more of an as an optimist. But in this time, to be offered no hope, to
mm,
realize, to come to understand the message, I'm like, I just have to live this way. I mean, I got to the point where I was afraid to leave the house. I was afraid to eat any food at this stage because I spent so much time in the restroom between pelvic issues and digestive issues. And I just was living in that kind of constant fear.
yeah.
And
Can I ask a question? You said you're a mom. Is the timing of the new symptoms having to do with any other event that you can trace it back to? Was this around the time that you had your children or some other life event?
oh,
Or can you
absolutely.
pin it back?
Oh,
You can
absolutely. Yeah,
pin
I
it back.
know what I
Okay,
know
okay, okay.
what was going on. I
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to mention it. I was curious if you can see a correlation
oh,
to a
absolutely.
stressful event. Okay.
My I'll just mention that some of the things were growing, but my mother's husband passed away a year or two earlier, and I was involved in his passing and overseeing and assisting my mother a lot in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely created a lot of stress. And then in my career, this is teaching, when we returned from COVID and students came
Oh,
back for the
yes.
first time, I
And
worked.
going online and all the stress of
Yes.
this too. Yeah.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
when we returned from online teaching to in-person teaching, that's the part
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about. I worked at a high poverty school with a lot of students and family in very challenged circumstances. So a lot of trauma occurred for those children and families during the COVID time.
Mm.
So the level of dysregulation from children who had found safety in their school setting, the food safety, emotional
Uh,
safety, that was
mm-hmm.
removed. So what came back was a very it was a very, very intense time that year in the school
Mm.
I was working. And I think in many schools, but especially if you worked in a high poverty school where resources were scarce. I went through almost that whole school year not sleeping. And
Oh, I can imagine.
that is the first time that ever happened to me. I'm very aware that it was related, but there was the part of me that was desperate to be there for those kids and couldn't be there in the way of like stretching myself as any further than I already was. That kind of perpetuated this anxiety that was off the charts because I really
Right.
cared about my students, really cared about my coworkers.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, that's very hard. A lot of people in chronic symptoms, as you probably already know, is this type T, as Dr. Schechter calls it, personality, were these really empathetic, caring people, like the best of traits. But at the same time, it tips over at a certain point and it's just creating this tension and this internal angst. And
Yeah,
yeah, I can just imagine.
it was tough. It was really tough. And the funny part is that I realized what was happening. This is before the symptoms really hit me. They were occurring, things were occurring, but not to that shutdown phase. I uh, chose to exit. And I'd never done this in my life. Exited. I was at a school I loved for 10 years. I loved that school. And I chose to exit before the school year ended. And because
Mhm.
I knew I needed to do it for my well being. And as soon as I got to safety, I was happy for about 2 weeks, like thrilled that I had prioritized myself, things I thought were feeling better. And that is when what I affectionately call my tsunami of symptoms started.
Mhm. Mhm.
So as soon as I got made the space available, I apparently I needed to do a lot more than what
I
I
can
had
imagine
done.
that there's being such a caring and empathetic person, I can imagine that there's guilt and shame and all these
Oh, I had
other
all that. Yes.
oh, yeah, coming up, and so it's
And
like, yes,
grief,
you feel the
grief.
safety and you can feel the yeah, grief is a big one too. That as you feel you did the right thing for yourself, at the same time, there's this, like, internal conflict, right?
There was
And yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah,
felt like I had abandoned my coworkers, my
yeah.
kids. I had two little boys in particular that I had been really involved with. They were brothers. And when I told them I was leaving, he looked at me and he just said, "Mrs. Emery, you're breaking my heart." And I
Oh.
literally like, I just like, I like couldn't get that out of my head for like a couple of years. The
Oh,
the grief I felt
yeah.
about leaving them.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's a very hard fine line, right? Trying to look out for your own needs and your self-preservation and yeah, everyone else that you want to care for in the world. Yeah, it's a tough one. So the new symptoms come up, this tsunami happens, and how did you realize, wait a minute, no, there's got to be another way, or like, what was the next step of how you started out of this? Is there good news? There's clearly
There
good news.
there
You've
is.
only
There
had
is good news. I love good news.
yeah.
So I ended up, for the first time in my life, I had to take some short-term disability,
Mhm.
and that gave me enough space to get to at least a baseline of feeling like I could go back to work and not be, I mean, I was still managing all my symptoms, but I wasn't completely shut down, just giving myself that space. And I continued following wherever I was led, like what was, I was just going to try the next thing and the next thing. And I just kept trying. And eventually, with deep gratitude, I found Curable. And I would say that was about a year after the big tsunami, as I refer to it.
When you were saying you were trying different things, was it things like more alternative approaches or
So I saw a gastro doctor. I had found a fabulous urologist, and I did have one
Mhm,
procedure for the interstitial cystitis, which is called a
mhm,
hydrodistension. And I
mhm.
also realized I never wanted to do it again, but I did
Right.
do it once. And she was a wonderful doctor for me. I did some other things like pelvic PT, and that ended up being an extremely helpful tool when I paired it with mind body work later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, by itself, not enough. Had to pair it with the mind body work. And I went to a naturopath who, I did all the gut tests, all the, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my gut, all of these types of things. But I
Right.
couldn't, my stomach could not even handle supplements, like nothing.
Mm.
I could not handle supplements. So even if they were going to cure me, I couldn't take them because my stomach was so sensitive. So but I would try to do what I could and keep exploring. And I did eventually, this was right before I kind of got involved with Curable. I decided that I needed to have a practitioner. I didn't care if it was a medical doctor or an alternative doctor. I needed somebody who cared about me
Mm.
or who I felt cared for, because I was just so scared all the time.
Right.
And I ended up finding that. And she was a long-term friend of mine who I'd never seen as a doctor. And she's a acupuncturist and a chiropractor. She's also somebody who's in a constant training, and she knew about Curable, and she has that whole mindset. And she ended up being a safety net for me and a wonderful practitioner, as well as me finding Curable and going down that road. That was extremely supportive for me.
I think I cannot stress that enough of if you don't have a doctor that you feel seen and heard and supported by, keep looking. It makes
Amen.
such a difference. Oh my gosh, such a difference to your mental health and just yeah, the healing capabilities that you have. If you're constantly feeling gaslit and not heard and not
Yes.
understood, oh, it's just yeah, so detrimental. I just want to stop quickly too to just mention what Curable is in case anybody doesn't know what that is. It's an app that I've actually used as well. It's essentially all these mind body tools and it's got oh how would you even describe it? It's got all the neuroscience and the trainings behind it. It's got classes that you can go to. It's got a panic button where if you are having a flare up of a migraine or some other symptom that you have, it can walk you through different things. It can ask you, do you want to do a meditation? Do you want to do a writing exercises? How about we do, yeah, there's all kinds of different tools and tips on there. I find it a great tool that I've heard many people say has helped them along the way. So if you haven't heard about that, please do Google it or check it out. On my website, actually, there's a 6-week free trial that you can get. There's a QR code, I think, on the home screen or under resources. So, okay, so you found this. You obviously went through some of the topics that I just mentioned or all their different tools. And did you find yourself buying into this whole mind body approach to healing and the neuroplastic pain and all these different concepts pretty quickly? Or were you remaining skeptical? Or how did that go? I'm curious.
So, no, I did not buy in.
I didn't either. That's why I was asking. Everybody keeps
And
talking about, oh, you have to be 100% bought in. And I do not believe that. I was not for quite a while and I still healed very well. Yeah. To a certain point, you need to start buying in at some point, but I don't think you don't have to hit yourself over the head over it. So, what was your experience then?
well, so I I found out about Curable from an we call interstitial cystitis IC in
Mhm.
an IC Facebook group. And I don't recommend a lot of these groups, but this particular one was very kind and gentle and not what I would call fear-based. And one of the things that people would do is list what was working for them, what was
Mhm.
getting them
Good.
into. Typically, people with interstitial cystitis don't believe that you can heal from it, uh, but they'll say, this is what's put me into remission. And
Right.
that's not what I believe. I believe you can heal completely. Um,
Yes.
and I believe it's neuroplastic for the most part, at least
Yeah.
my version. And
Hmm.
anyway, so some of these lists with no explanation. Some people a few times wrote Curable. Didn't even say that it was an app, didn't say what it was, just had that in there. And I was like, what on earth? And, so one of the times I researched it and I was kind of like, didn't really know what it was doing, but kind of sounded interesting. So I loaded it, and the only app I'd ever paid for, and kind of looked through the science. I was like, but I wasn't really getting it. I wasn't. And
Yeah.
I don't have a big science brain. I'll just say that. It's not where I gravitate. But, it was interesting. But I just sort of listened to a little bit of the education and was like, well, maybe, I don't know. And I kept receiving the emails from Curable, and one came through with a recording, Dr. Strax's recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on my way to an appointment, and it was a long drive. And so I just thought, oh, I'll just listen to that. That sounds interesting. Something about they hooked me in the subject line, something like that. And so I listened to it. And by the time I got to the end of that, I was like, oh my God, I am sold. And I realized what I needed was a story. I needed a
Mm,
story to connect to that science. And it did help me because I grew up so woo woo, so much
hmm.
alternative health. It helped me to hear it, an MD's experience.
Right,
Even
right.
though I am more alternative minded, I needed to really take the next step. It helped me to hear that this wasn't something in that sphere, that it was neuroscience, and then connecting it to an experience and being able to explain that experience changed everything. And I dove into the app full heartedly after that.
Mhm.
Not to say I I still wasn't sure. I think for a long time, like, is this really gonna work? But
Mm.
I'm just gonna dive in and do it anyway, because nothing
I think
else
that's
is.
exactly. I think that's the attitude that we have to have, or the most successes that I see is that usually we're at rock bottom. We don't know what else to do. Nothing else is working. And you hear this concept and it's kind of like, what? Like, how's and then some people are into the science. Some people need that to like, well, I need proof. I need to understand. What do you mean? What's a neural pathway? What does that mean? What
Yeah.
and then I have some clients that are just like, I don't really care about that. I understand the mind body connection when you say it like that my thoughts and my feelings can show up in my body. And, when I'm nervous, I get a stomach ache. I get that. Okay. That makes me understand. And I understand that I haven't processed my emotions for, yeah, ever. Nobody really taught me how. And I can see where that could have caused me some problems. And then they run in that direction because, they just kind of, that concept hooks them. But yeah, I think that it's a mixture and it just depends. But we either get to rock bottom and it's the people that can be open to, hey, I'm going to just try anything. And that's where I got to. I just was like, this is
Yeah.
weird. I think a lot of this is strange. Like, I don't know how this is helping me. And how do they know that trauma is stuck in my body? Like, how do they know? Like, I questioned a lot, but I just was like, well, it makes sense though on some level. And I'm just going to try because what do I have to lose? And that's what I love about this work is that there is really no downside to it. So you could still be going to the doctors. You could still
That's
be
right.
trying to, you could still be on medication. You could still be hunting down the biomedical cause of things as long as you're not it's all about the energy that we go into things with. As long as
Yeah.
you're not doing this with a frantic like I have to fix, I have to find what's wrong, da, da, da. Like as long as you can kind of open and be curious, this side of the work of just trying to regulate the nervous system and understand the tensions that you've got within yourself and what's causing the brain to feel unsafe, I think is just a win-win. Like there's just no downside to it. So
I agree.
yeah. So that's great that you found something that worked then. And was there a specific tool or was there something a shift in the mindset or I don't know, a focus area that stands out to you of something that helped you the most?
Yeah. So as you explained earlier, Curable offers like a menu of tools. And when I was at the height of illness and I want to say nervous system dysregulation, I really needed choices at that time.
Mhm.
And anyone saying I had to do X, Y, or Z every single day or for this length of time really just sent me to outer space. Like I could not take that. I needed just to check in at that time every day with myself and just say, or not every day even, just a few times a week I would check into the app in the beginning, like
Mhm.
which part do I want to try brain retraining? Do I want to try writing? Do I want to try meditating? Do I want to look more at the education, which is the thing I looked at the least at the time?
Yeah.
um, but over time, I found that my favorite tool was journaling. And I know this isn't the case for a lot of people, but that's what it was for me. And I found that it offered me a safe way to approach unlocking emotion and
Mm.
learning it created a pattern of speaking kind to myself, which had been lacking, hugely
Yes.
lacking. And the turning point really came in linking what was going on in my life when my first symptom occurred. And that symptom, of course, was headaches, migraines.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so to explore that time frame, because I didn't really know why. Why did they start at this age, at 8?
Mhm.
So I was kind of pondering that. And then there was a particular exercise that was the gateway for me. And that exercise was to write as if I was 8 years old, because that's when they started for me. So I let my 8-year-old self describe events as if they were happening right now. I'm 8 years old. I am walking into, I'm looking at this house that my mother and I are moving into. I described what I see, I describe what I feel, and that turned into a reveal that I never saw coming.
Mm.
And as I wrote, what happened is I gave my unconscious, my 8-year-old self, the chance to speak.
Mm.
And I linked what was anxiety and big feelings in the present moment to then. I was able to see how much anger and sadness were living in me, which I
Mm.
did not know. I did not
All
know.
those years.
I
Yeah.
did not know. And
Mhm.
like many of us who have neuroplastic pain and symptoms, we minimize
Yes.
things that occurred. We say things like, well, I didn't have big T trauma. Um,
Mhm.
but anyone who is having symptoms has some level of trauma that's occurred that is traumatic for them. And I think being able to say that now and not have shame, like that is just a fact. That's,
I 100% believe that. And I think part of the issue that I've come up with is that the word trauma is so either triggering for people or they don't understand it. And it's just like, no, I didn't have trauma because I didn't have these big, as you called it, big T traumas, these, big, horrible things that happen. No, my childhood was okay. And like they just dismiss it. And when you really go back and look at it, as I love how Dr. Clark says it, he says anything
yes,
that has affected a child's self esteem or self worth for any period of time is trauma, is enough to create chronic pain and symptoms in adulthood. And there have been study after study. I just was doing a post on this that's going to come out soon on adverse childhood events. So there's what's called an ACE score, ACE,
yeah,
standing for the adverse childhood events. They've done study upon study on this that directly correlates your adversity in childhood to development of chronic pain and symptoms later in life. Specifically, they've done things on IBS, ironically, you had this, and fibromyalgia and in general chronic pain. But they've done meta-analysis also, which is meaning they go back and take multiple studies and then compile that and see what the correlations are. They've done study after study. It's all coming back that there is. I actually just updated my website, actually, if anybody's interested to look at any of those studies. I think it's on the homepage where it says the 12 questions on if you have neuroplastic symptoms. And one of the bottom questions is if you've had adversity in childhood. And I just did that last night, actually, hyperlinked these studies because it's just so fascinating to me. And we all kind of push that aside. So, yeah, it's so, so important, I think, that we raise that topic and really have people look back. And I love this journaling exercise of going back to when it started and writing at that age. I love that.
Yeah.
Very
Oh,
helpful.
I did not expect what occurred. I really did not. Because intellectually, I know how my
Mm.
life went, but your unconscious is speaking. You're giving it, you're allowing, or you're another way to say it is if you want to speak in parts, you're allowing that part to speak.
Mm-hmm.
IFS
Exactly.
is what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. Internal family systems, right?
Yes.
Dick Schwartz.
Yes.
Yeah, I love parts work, and I think it goes well with this work because it's essentially, yeah, we should probably just quickly describe that as just that we all are created with different parts of us. The migraine part, there's the part that has shame, there's the part that's a go-getter and a hyperachiever, overachiever, there's a part that wants to lay on the couch and do nothing, there's a part that beats herself up all day long, there's a part that's self-compassionate. We have all these different parts working within us. Some are protective parts, some are yeah, there's a whole system to it, but it's fascinating to journal based on the parts. And I've done meditations actually that have gone into my migraine part and asking in a deep meditative state, asking that migraine part why you came, why you were needed, what was happening around that time that you felt like you needed to protect me. Oh my gosh, that was a powerful one. Loved that. Talk about insights
Yeah.
coming out of stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's powerful work you
Yeah. I
can look
love the
into if you
question to those parts. What are you protecting me from? Because there
yes.
usually is some aspect that they're helping you. The belief is, even if it's not quite correct, that they're protecting you in some way. Yeah,
Right.
we don't need to go. That's like,
That
yeah,
could be a whole other episode. I love
yeah,
that
yeah.
that topic.
So after what I want to say about after that part of the doing that exercise, at this stage, I was able to say to myself, well, maybe I'll try an experiment of writing every day. No pressure. I'm just going to explore it and try that as an experiment. I don't, no have tos, but I would like to explore. And so to do that, I wanted to try a lot of different avenues for writing, not just one way. I had purchased Dr. Schubiner's book, Unlearn Your Pain, and I did not like read his book cover to cover initially. I was selectively going through and picking out his different writing prompts, and he has many, many different avenues. And some of those are even inventories about your life. So I went
Mhm.
through and did all the inventories, questions about your mother, your maternal relations, paternal relations, all of the different things. And so every day I was engaging. And part of that is also his EAET practice. And that one is very direct. And I used it in journaling, and it helped me really uncover what I was angry about and then what
Mhm.
was beneath the anger. And I would just say to your listeners that going through that process was uncomfortable, messy, and challenging, but in the end, extremely fruitful.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I think it's good to know that this is work. It takes work, and we're really either trying to learn new things that we have suppressed for decades, trying to change patterns that we've had for decades,
Yeah.
trying to bring things out of unconscious, subconscious levels to the conscious awareness so that we can work on it. I mean, these things are, some of them are definitely uncomfortable. It takes work. And I think the biggest message that is what you just said, that it's worth it though. These things then can break open the tension. They break open these insights that allow you to, yeah, be more free and let go of some of this stuff that is just so burdensome to our bodies. We're just holding on to so much. And we all are. I mean, modern lifestyle is just and never learning how to process emotions. I don't know if anybody's household is taught that. I don't know, maybe nowadays, but back in my day, it
Right.
wasn't certainly. And it was more like my mother saying, like, oh, you talk about boys all the time. You always change your mind. Don't talk to me until, you know, you have a clear understanding of who you like, but I don't want to hear about it until then. It's like, gosh, it's like I'm meant to be able to come to my mom to talk about these things. But it was like, no, emotions, like, no, like it's too much. So yeah, we're taught these things or even instinctively just not necessarily told that, but we've learned this along the way. And so relearning these things is yeah, a challenge sometimes, but so worth it because you get to the other side and like you're saying, you're symptom free, had one migraine in the last 2 years. That's amazing when you talk about 18
Yeah.
months of everyday I mean,
Oh,
that's
oh,
amazing.
oh,
Amazing.
yeah. I know it really is. It's amazing.
Your
I
smile.
just
I
want
know. And
um
so go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. Oh, I was
You
just
go.
gonna say, well, journaling was my favorite. Would you like me to share a few other of the tools that
Yeah.
spoke to me?
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely,
oh,
absolutely. I wanna talk about the journaling for a second really quickly because you mentioned learning about I wanna mention Anna Holtzman because this is how we met actually, love her, and some people might recognize her name from she was on the podcast here and telling her recovery story, but she has a method that you learned, I think, that helped you as well. Do you wanna talk about that just for a quick second? She's got a workshop coming up on September 10th, so I wanna give a shout out to that, and I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Ooh, I need to publish this really quickly then. But yeah, and it's on her journal method, so yeah.
um, well, I try to recommend to everybody that, first of all, that you follow who speaks to you,
Mhm,
whoever that person is. And when I was really ill, I had to have people who, for me, had a gentle, really kind message and approach. And Anna was one of those people. And I first encountered her on, at that time, Curable was hosting what they were calling at that time live events.
mhm,
And you would join, and there would be somebody presenting, or in this case, Anna led us through a journaling technique. And so that's where I first encountered her. And then I listened to her all her podcast episodes and started following her on Instagram, which I recommend.
mhm,
And gradually I was in her like pilot class that she was, as she shifted from chronic pain coach to like a transition coach for people
mhm,
moving into a big transition, because
mhm.
that was her favorite part of chronic pain coaching, was when
Yeah,
people would get to this point of healing where they were like so empowered that they started into a new endeavor. And so that's what she found she
yeah,
loves. So that's what she's doing now. Anyhow, so
right.
yeah, I don't want to give away everything, but
Yeah, yeah.
she has an amazing journaling technique that I have honestly used Anna's approach like from the first time I heard it. And then this one just
Mhm,
took it much further.
mhm.
And I can't recommend her high enough. honestly.
Okay, good, good. Okay, yeah, I'll link all that below, and I'll actually get this podcast out this weekend so that people can take advantage of that if they want to. And there's all different ways to journal to bring up
There
things from
is.
the subconscious. I know Nicole Sachs has a popular way of doing it called journal speak. She recommends a daily practice. So yeah, I'm going to be in the class next week with Anna to learn her system, and I really hope that I can get back to journaling on a regular basis because I hear so often that that is a good helpful tool, and I think I've avoided that. I've avoided the emotion side, if I'm being honest, for quite a while.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll just say this one thing. So there's a technique called dialoguing in
Mhm.
journaling, and Anna has really crafted that into a loving space. It really is not scary when you do it in this way. And I think it's gentle and loving. And it also, for example, you can take anything and let it have a voice. Let's say it's anxiety. You ask, "Dear anxiety, what are you feeling?" And then another part of you responds to that with love and kindness after you've, and this is kind of, I'm not going to say much more, but I'm going to, that's so she can
Yeah.
reveal that. But there are, it's very kind, and you
Mhm.
just really learn to, it gets you in this practice of thinking kindly to yourself.
And it's so I have a whole episode on self-compassion because that is just so, so, so important to cultivate in this journey and to, yeah, that made such a big difference to me. Okay, so let's go. I'm trying to take out all the, I keep interrupting, but I'm trying to take out all the nuggets and trying to have all these like learnable, teachable things that people can use. So let's go into more of the other tools that you use then. What were some of the other ones that helped you the most?
Well, I'll tell you, at this day now, I
Mhm.
actually do journal every day without pressure, but just because
Okay.
I like it and it gives me a safe place to process
Mhm.
any emotion. I never thought that I would be saying that, but that is what's happening.
Good,
um,
good. If it
so
works, keep
helpful.
going. Yeah.
So anyhow,
Good.
the other tools were, especially when I was at the height of symptoms, were meditations that helped me to release an emotion or and connect it with the symptom in some way. And my favorite curable meditation was the forgiveness meditation. I went back to that one again and again. And it's not forgiveness like you think. It's not just like I get to forgive wrongs that were done to me that I perceive as wrongs, because we do need to, those of us who have suppressed anger, we do need to have that time where we just get to have it, because that's what we've been doing, is
Mhm.
not having it, right?
Right, right.
Um, so it's not that. It's not glossing over that. And then the other thing I would say is creating authentic boundaries, because that was really lacking for me. Beginning to prioritize my needs much, much more. Gentle words and actions and slowing my life down, huge thing for
Mm,
me.
I love
Huge
that.
thing. And
Okay.
then I would say letting go of fear, or finding ways to let go as often as I could. And I say this now kind of lovingly to my past self, because I had no idea that I was so afraid.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I didn't
I
know
think
that I was living like that.
I think it goes with this like trauma thing that we just talked about that you think, oh no, that's not when you hear that word fear. And that's why I relied heavily on Dr. Schubner's 7 F's. When I talk
Yeah.
about fear, then it's like, well, it's not just fear, it's frustration, it's your hyper focus on things. It's all these different things are causing the same tension, I would say, or the, perceived danger to the brain, essentially. I just saw somebody did a study recently that everything underneath was fear-based. It was a fear-based thought or that was leading to all the different pain and symptoms. And when you start looking at it in this lens, it's like, yeah, that is an
You know,
underlying emotion.
I would say
But
fear and avoidance. And I used to always characterize myself as conflict avoidant. And
mhm.
it's like I just hated conflict. And I was just like, oh, if there was gonna be
Yeah.
conflict, I wanted to like even small things like if I would hear things that were uncomfortable on the radio, I would turn the radio off. If somebody was having like a disagreement, I would go into the other room, like things like that. Like I was so conflict avoidant. And now, whenever I become aware that there's something I'm avoiding, it's actually like a cue. And as I can turn it into a questioning, and often there's something really important in that avoidance that I can, by having a question about it, now move toward.
Mm,
And that's very much the same that, like when we have chronic pain, we start avoiding all of these things, right? Which
right.
reinforces it. It's the same with emotional things. The more we avoid them, there's a reinforcing. But it's not that you have to like push yourself through something. And just a tiny example without going too far here, I have a relative who is going through a lot of physical issues and leading me to believe that time is limited. And they are somebody who's very valuable to me. I was
Mhm.
noticing that I was avoiding making phone calls, I was avoiding answering emails, and I was like asking myself, like, what? This is someone you value. Why is this happening?
Mhm.
And I asked myself that question, like, just with like genuine, like, what's going on here? And all of a sudden I felt this flood of emotion, like crying. And it was because I was sorrowful at the thought of losing her. That's all.
Right. Mm.
I didn't want to talk to her because that made me think about it. But after I let myself have the sorrow, I was able to like change that and was able to write all the things I loved about her and actually send that to her, which she
Oh,
said was,
nice.
yeah, and
Oh,
then I was actually able to transform that into a weekly phone call with her and
nice.
and then eventually even tell her, yeah, I was avoiding you because of
Oh,
this,
yeah.
and
And that
have a
I'm sure helped
discussion.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah. What a great
it's
insight.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, not to push yourself on avoidance, but to see it as there's something else happening here.
I think the
So,
curiosity, that word I just love because it just
yeah.
is so soft and just be curious. Just nobody's forcing you to do anything. Just like if you're curious, it just opens up a whole new world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think fear is underneath everything, and I think also overwhelm. This avoidance and
Yes.
overwhelm. I like to think of that word as well. When I feel overwhelmed, something like I need to do a little bit of digging because there's stuff underneath that.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Is there anything else, any other tools or things that you wanted to mention?
The only other thing that's maybe unique to me, but or maybe it's everyone, I'm not really sure. But for me, it's been giving myself permission to live by my own rules and to seek empowerment.
Mhm.
And that has been awesome. So freeing.
Yeah. Getting our power back, I think, after so many years of feeling disempowered, and
Yes.
that this is, you use the words, this is my lot in life. That's how I felt. So once you start feeling well and start coming back into this identity and getting the power back, that is in a sense, the brain retraining as well. I mean, I think all these different aspects, a lot of people ask me, like, well, which are you supposed to focus on when? It's like just little bit by bit, you're doing all the things. And eventually you look back, and I don't even remember. Sometimes I would just look back and I'd say, oh, I haven't had a migraine in ages. Or, oh, I
Right?
am doing this activity and I would have never done that before. Or, wow, I don't even have medication in my purse and I'm in town. I hadn't even thought about that. Interesting. Whereas before I would freak if I
Right.
realized that I didn't have the medication because what if I get one? And then I'd work myself up into getting one because I would be so worried that I was going to get one. So yeah, it's like all these little things you look back and the empowerment matters, the self compassion that you talked about, the bringing joy back, all the things, just slowly but surely, step by step, bring you into a whole new world.
Absolutely.
And speaking of what a great transition, Karen, speaking of transitions, so now you are helping others, which I think is fantastic. And this is so, yeah, once you get a little bit to the other side and it's just like, oh my gosh, I have to scream it from the rooftops, is how I felt. So now you're doing some coaching, right? And why don't you tell us what you're up to now?
Yeah. So last year, I took a leap and decided that I was going to leave education, which had been a big, long love um, until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Or, I suspected I had a lingering symptom and I just one out of the pile and
Mm,
that kept flaring up. And I suspected that it was related to some mechanism in me that was related to my career. And I couldn't pinpoint it, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just decided to go with my inner guidance that
hmm
said, you need to make a change. And so I left that and then spent some time exploring coaching and taking courses and getting to work with Anna like on a regular basis.
hmm
And yeah, so now I am taking coaching clients and I'm just so happy to offer to others what has been freedom like no other. you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my life is light now. It has a lightness to it as opposed
Love
to
that.
that previous life.
hmm
And yeah, so that's what's
That is
happening
great.
now.
And what we'll do is we'll also link in the show notes all your contact information and the Instagram and wherever else people can find you. And I think stories are just so important because it just not only shows what's possible, but this was the way that I first heard about this work. It was on somebody else's podcast. I listened to them talking so nonchalantly about getting out of migraine pain. And I really, at that time, was just like, what are they talking about? That cannot be. This cannot be true. Like, what are they? And they were just so confidently, just, as we are probably people listening, like, they're so just matter of fact that they, are not in pain anymore. How does that work? But it really is possible. And so I think just these small nuggets of hope that start to feed a different way and this curiosity that I'm talking about and this new approach and just trying things and being less hard on yourself and all the different things. It's just make such a difference. And so I think I'm really passionate about trying to capture as many of these stories as possible because your journey was different from my journey, was different from Anna's versus, other people that I've interviewed on here. And each person is so different that they can maybe resonate with something that you've said or with somebody else, what they've said to get, the next piece of the puzzle. I really feel like my path was a little bit laid out, like just puzzle pieces. Like I would listen to a podcast and hear about, oh, Curable App, never heard of that. What is that? And then I would explore that. And then through that, I would learn about Dr. Howard Schubner. And then I would learn about this. And then, so I really hope that this episode and talking to you and some of the other work is just kind of bringing these pieces of the puzzle to the forefront and allowing people to gain new awareness. So I really, really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate all the insights and all the information. I love all the different avenues that we've explored and so
Yeah.
happy that you're feeling well and that you're now able to give back because it's such a rewarding career now, I can say from experience of just now being able to see other people get their lives back essentially. So best of luck with your new career and I am sure we'll be in touch.
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. I am so happy to meet you. I feel like I've met a new friend, and I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing
absolutely.
you in Boulder.
Yeah. In Boulder, yeah, we'll meet in
Yeah.
person. It's great. People might be like, "What's in Boulder?" The
Oh,
ATNS
yeah.
conference we're gonna both be at, the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms has their annual conference out there.
Yeah. I was just thinking if there was a message to those people just beginning on this journey who are listening. I shared some high points, but there are so many techniques that can be involved in helping you. And I'm speaking to your listeners. And if you can do one thing, honestly, if there's any way you can turn down the pressure on yourself, this is
Yes.
one of the greatest gifts you can give, because I promise you there is a lot of internal pressure you're putting on yourself in some way. So I just offer that. And if anyone had questions for me about my particular journey, it would be to email me at the moment, because my website's not quite up and running yet.
When it's ready, we'll link it.
ChelseaEmery53@gmail.com is the one for this work.
Okay. All right, great. And we'll link that below for anybody for the proper spelling and all that. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. And all the insights are so helpful. And I will hope to see you. Well, I will see you soon. I'll see you at the end of the month and we can chat about more of this work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Migraine Oasis. I hope today's episode has inspired you to explore new approaches and provide some actionable steps you can use. Check out the show notes for any of the links of resources mentioned. If you found this valuable, please follow and subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. This greatly helps our algorithm to ensure that this information gets out to more people who can benefit. If you're not already a part of the Migraine Oasis online community, check us out and stay tuned for more support, relief, and healing throughout the week. Until next time, stay hopeful and believe that more pain-free days are in your future. We're honored to support your healing journey. Take care of yourself and be well.